Big 12 games, but we also have as a group our predictions of some other college games around the country. Let's go to that first. Everyone's turned in their picks. Paul, Craig, Garrett, and Emery. I am now in, Garrett, what happened to you?
I'm in all sorts of a terrible situation.
Craig,
I'm not sure.
Craig, you pulled yourself out of the gutter.
Those first couple weeks, I was sinking, and these last couple weeks, I've definitely started to swim a little bit.
Not much. Well, there's a few changes here. There's a couple of games. Let's start with the one at the top. Paul, take the Beavers with coming off the loss to Washington State, hosting Utah. Again, no Cam Rising, it appears, this week. But, man, Utah just finds the way to win. Will they be able to kind of contain Oregon State? All of us take Utah, but Paul takes Oregon State.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get taking Oregon State. I do. I think that's certainly a possible outcome here. But I'm not going to doubt Utah at this point. If they get deep into it and they're playing Oregon and Washington without Cam Rising, then I'll flip my mind. But I'm not quite ready. And you know what? Last week I made a big deal. I was like, they're not going to have Cam Rising. I need to, flip my pick and all that. And I actually lucked into that somehow because I had originally had UCLA, and they didn't even end up having Rising. So I just got very fortunate that game, that I decided to change that, thinking Rising would play. But, yeah, I don't know how sustainable it is for the course of the season, but I do think that they can still beat Oregon State, all due respect to the Beavers, but that should be a great game.
Quick note from you, Garrett, on that. You just feel like they'll figure out a way to win this game?
Well, I think DJU kind of got exposed a little bit last week, so that offense going up against this defense, I got to ride with the Utes defense.
All right, across the board, even though I think it might be a very entertaining, or should be a very entertaining game, Texas and KU down in Austin, all of us across the board have the Horns.
Yeah, and I wanted to expand a bit more on some of the Big 12 later. We can do that because I think we're kind of crammed right here to do like that, the Big 12 too. But, I'm taking Texas. It's at home. I think that they're going to be head on a swivel for an upset alert. I think they respect Jalen Daniels, and they know that if they're not careful, like their dreams could come crashing down. So I think they've got the right mindset. That's the biggest thing for Texas. And you pair that with the talent and all of that other stuff, and, yeah, I'm going with Texas.
All right. Then this one interesting because Notre Dame coming off what has got to be an emotional scar after the way they finished with Ohio State. I still think because of Hartman, they're just pretty good. And Duke is also, with Mike Elko, playing really good football, as is Kentucky, who's at the bottom of the page. I'll take the Irish. Garrett, you and Emery will go with Dookie.
I like Duke. I think Duke, I was real high on Duke coming into the season. I think the win over Clemson kind of solidified that. Riley Leonard's really good. They're extremely experienced in the trenches. And Notre Dame coming off that emotional loss against Ohio State. I've just seen, following teams in the SEC, I've seen too many times where you play big games and then the next week you have a letdown. I think that's what you're going to see from Notre Dame. And unfortunately, you can't have a letdown game against Duke.
Yeah, Duke has been super impressive. I think they're still in some ways kind of flying under the radar. They would not be if they win this game. Obviously, they would just, like a rocket shooting to the sky of the college football world if they were to beat the Irish and hand them a second straight loss. But because Notre Dame lost last week in such heartbreaking fashion, I think they're going to be reconfigured and ripped up and ready to go. I think they'll be able to slow down Riley Leonard and company, and I think that they'll be able to run the football. But, yeah, this should be a very physical game. But in the end, I also default to, I think, it's the Sam Hartman factor, too. I think that just makes Notre Dame different. So, yeah, I go with the Irish.
All right, we got a couple more to get to in about 2 minutes to do it or less, and we're going to go straight to Max Garrett after this. It's hard to see the Ole Miss and even the LSU logos on the left-hand side because of that speckled background, but the next game, LSU and Ole Miss coming off the loss to Alabama. Looked like they may have had a chance in that game as far as because Bama looked like they're vulnerable. I just think like LSU is kind of getting themselves back on track. They did have to fight through the game with Arkansas, but I just feel like they have too much.
I'll default to Garrett here to go first on LSU.
Man, I'm not sold on this LSU team. They're good, but there's so many inconsistencies with them. I think Jaden Daniels has got to figure out a way to get out of bounds and make better decisions because he takes too many unnecessary hits that are ultimately going to cost him. Ole Miss kind of scared me prior to this game, but after watching that offense last week, I felt a little more confident about LSU's defense, so that's why I'm riding with the Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ole Miss's defense looked pretty good. Like, they could cause some problems, but their offense, they're not rolling right now. And you would think that they'd just be much farther along. Like, Judkins is clearly a little bit banged up still. They aren't just firing on all cylinders in that way. So, if it's shootout, I think I trust LSU more. If it's a close scoring game, that's where Ole Miss, I think, could make it interesting. But I lean LSU here.
All right, the last game, and then we get to Max. It is Florida. Had the nice win a couple of weeks ago. Kentucky just keeps on. They're still under the radar a little bit. I was surprised that they weren't ranked in the top 25. Florida, Garrett, you're going to take – I don't think they are.
I thought they got in the end of last week.
Maybe they did.
Not.
Gators, you have Garrett, the Gators, and everyone else is taking just kind of the rock solid of Kentucky.
Yeah, I never trust Graham Mertz, but I think Trevor Etienne's starting to come into his own. If they, and I feel like Florida has realized that if your offense is going to go, you got to go through him. Ricky Pearsall's starting to look a lot better. I don't know, man. When you look at Kentucky's schedule, I don't think they played the caliber of opponent that Florida's played. I think that's going to give the Gators the benefit.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. And I looked, they're not in the top 25. I thought that they were at this point, but no, that was not the case last week. But they're right there on the cusp of it, receiving votes heavily. So they would, with a win, skyrocket into the rankings. This one was probably the toughest game to pick for me, honestly. I do feel like Florida's got a little bit of mojo going. But Kentucky, off to a nice start. I think that, like Garrett said, we haven't seen them fully stretch their legs just yet, but I'm excited to see that because I think they're going to have to here against the Gators. But, this one is excited to see Devin Leary in a big-time matchup with the Gators as the opponent. And, this has some interesting ingredients, but I totally understand the Florida pick, but I'm gonna roll with Kentucky.
All right, so there are 5 picks at around 5:10 or so. We'll look at the rest of the Big 12.